Hello and welcome back to the Bag of Bones Bible teaching. We are now getting into the sixth book of the Bible, which is called Joshua. A real quick recap of what has happened. The Israelites has escaped Egypt, where they were enslaved, and have wandered through the desert for 40 years. An entire new generation of people um, was born and grew up, and now they are ready, under the leadership of Joshua, to occupy the promised land. Moses is no longer alive. He died at the age of 120, and they are ready to take on the new land, the promised land, the land of Canaan, which will later on be called Israel. So on the way to the promised land, they encounter several nations. One of them is the nation of Moab, and the other one was Ammon, where the Ammonites live. They conquer them, and at this very moment, there are 2.5 tribes of Jacob: the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And they say to Joshua, "We really like this land. We want to stay here. We don't have to go across the Jordan River. Can we stay here?" And Joshua said, "Okay, I'll make a deal with you. You could stay here, but your fighting men, have to come with the rest of us across the river, and you need to stay with us fighting until we conquered the whole land." And they agree, and they are now getting to the Jordan River. Through a similar miracle as before in the Red Sea, God dried up the Jordan River long enough for the people to cross on dry land. So now they are in the promised land, and at this very moment, God stopped giving them daily food and water. The food, by the way, we call manna, and now they are on their own, but that's okay because the land is fertile. There are incredible fruits over there, and it's just a beautiful land. Now, there's something that they have not done yet, which was in the law of Moses, and that is all the men had to be circumcised. I don't know if you know it, but circumcision is not comfortable, and it took the men about 3 days to recover from their circumcision before they were ready to go and fight again. The first city that they approach in the promised land is a heavily fortified walled city of Jericho. In Jericho, there are two walls that surround the city. They're about 30 feet high. The inner wall is 12 feet thick, made out of bricks, and the outer wall is 6 feet thick, made out of rock. The city is so densely populated that they ended up building bridges over the walls and had houses on top of those walls. So Joshua sends two spies out to the city of Jericho. The spies look around and they end up at a brothel. And the lady who invites them in, her name is Rahab. Now, Rahab tells the spies, they're looking for you. So when the police comes, I will hide you. And the the spies are kind of wondering why she is so kind to them. She says, all the people in Jericho are scared. They are like paralyzed because we've heard that your people crossed the Red Sea. We've heard that the Egyptian army was killed. We've heard about the Moabites and the Ammonites that you took the land from. We know what your people are capable of, and they are scared. And she said, I want to serve your God. Will you spare our lives, my life and that of my family? The spies said, yes, we will do that. Why don't you hang a red rope out of your window so that we will all recognize it? And that red rope is actually the same as the smearing of the blood on the doorposts that the Israelites had to do back in Egypt. So Rahab lowers the spies out of the window and they escape to safety. So now they're ready to go to Jericho. The two spies have given all the information to Joshua, and everybody knows about Rahab and that they should spare her life. And on the way to Jericho, Joshua gets the instruction from the Lord how to take the city. He said, do the following. For the next 6 days, take all your men and walk in silence one time around the city. You do that 6 days in a row. On the 7th day, you will walk around the city 6 times in silence, and then you'll do it one more time, but by then you will all blow your horns and you yell out loud. And that is how you will take the city. But there is one more rule, and that is you are not to take anything out of the city as spoil. You don't take silver, you don't take gold, you don't take clothing, nothing. All the spoil of the city belongs to me. Okay, so with that set of instructions, Joshua takes the lead and he instructs all the people to do exactly what God told him. And in total obedience, they do that. 6 days, and then on the 7th day, on the 7th time around the city, they all blow their horns and yell out loud, and the walls come tumbling down. And that is how they conquered the city of Jericho. Rahab, as it is told later, actually becomes the great, 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 great grandmother of King David and ultimately ends up being in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Rahab, a prostitute. Imagine that. So now they have conquered the city. Everybody is very, very confident. And in overconfidence, they go to the next city, which is called Ai. And they don't send enough men to Ai. And when they approach Ai, the people of Ai come out of the city and chase them and kill a bunch of Israeli people. So they run away from Ai and come crying to Joshua. And they Joshua is told by God, there is sin in the camp, and you did not ask me for instructions on how to take Ai. Now, to take care of the sin in the camp, you have to find out who did what. And through lottery, a man was discovered to have taken gold and silver and fine linens out of the city of Jericho and hid it under his tent. And for that sin, that man and his family was killed. The next time going to Ai, they had enough people, and through a brilliant plan of action, they conquered the city of Ai. And the news spread in the land, and the people were very, very scared of this big army of Hebrew people, Israelites. But that didn't stop anybody from resisting. But over and over and over again, Joshua and the people conquered city after city after city. And Joshua actually drove a big wedge right through the middle of the land of Canaan, thereby limiting travel from the people from the north and the south to help each other. So after he cleaned the center, he then cleaned out the south, and after that he cleaned the north. So at this very moment, the people from the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh were allowed to go back to their families across the Jordan River. Now the land was conquered, and now, again through lottery, Joshua divided up the land among all the tribes. In this case, on this side of the Jordan River, it was the 9.5 tribes that were left over. The other 2.5 were not participating in the lottery because they already had gotten their land. So the land was divided, and little by little they went to all their promised sections, driving out more people, but unfortunately not driving them all out. With some people, they got into agreements. You can stay here if you serve us, but this was exactly what God said not to do. Do not mingle with the people that you needed to drive out. They did it anyhow. They were disobedient again, and that came to haunt them later. So now in total, 40 years have gone by. Joshua is now at the ripe old age of 120, and Joshua delivers a wonderful speech, and it ends with this: "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord our God." And all the people say the same. And to this day, Jewish people will have that saying on a little plaque on their doorpost. Jewish people are very much into the traditions, and now you see that these traditions stem from thousands and thousands of years ago. So at this point, if we look at our skeleton, we are now a little bit past the pelvic bone, and we're really working in the hip. Okay, this leaves us with the next step. The next step after Joshua dies, we can read in the book of Judges. Now, judges are not judges that sit on a bench with a hammer and a wig on. A judge is actually more of a troubleshooter. A judge is actually someone who is appointed by God to take care of occupying armies, attacking armies, and leading the people to victory. There is no more Joshua. There is no more central government. All the sections of the country are now ruled by elders who take care of only their section. Now, there are a few people in the book of Judges whose names you might have heard. One of them, very famous, is a man called Gideon. And Gideon was somebody who became a judge in the northern section. And Gideon was told by God, get yourself an army to fight the next people. And he had this huge army available. And God said, no, that's too many people. Reduce it to 3,000. And then he had the 3,000 people, and God said, no, you still have too many. Why don't you do this? Bring them all to the water and let them drink and watch. And the people started to drink. Some of them got on their hands and knees and put their face right on the water and started to drink. But there were others who scooped water out of the river and brought the water to their mouth. And while drinking, they were watching the scenery. And God said, those people are the ones you take into battle. Those are the famous 300, Gideon's 300. And again, by being obedient to God, they won the victory. Another very famous name out of the book of Judges is Samson. Samson, the strong man. Now, he was not very bulky, he was just a regular man. He did not look like the Incredible Hulk, Otherwise, people would have known where his strength came from. But his strength was very charismatic. It was given by God at the right time. And you've heard of Samson and Delilah. And you've heard of Samson, that he killed a lion. And later he saw in the carcass of the lion, he saw a honeycomb. And he took the honeycomb out, and he came up with a riddle. And the riddle was something like, out of the mouth of the eater comes meat, out of the strong comes sweet. And that riddle was um, uh, told to the family members of a woman he was going to marry. But anyhow, that is a story that you can read on your own. It's just the Bible is so full of stories, incredible stories, and do that while you ride the bicycle instead of the bullet train. Okay? So eventually, Samson is being caught. His hair is cut off. Now he doesn't have any strength anymore. And he is put on a treadmill where he has to um, basically be an ox. And later, he's chained to pillars. And above the pillars is a second story where a lot of Philistines are having a party. And Samson's hair is growing again. And with the strength that God gave him, he pulls the pillars down, and the whole upstairs falls on top of him, but he kills 3,000 people in the process. So that's another judge. Then there are many, many more judges in that book. A lot of people that only get a little mention. But anyhow, it's a good book. It covers a time span of approximately 200 years. So now we get towards the end of the book of Judges, and we get to the last book that I want to cover today, and that is a wonderful romantic book called the Book of Ruth. Now, there is a woman in the city of Bethlehem, and her name is Naomi. Naomi's married and has 2 sons, and there is a famine and drought in Bethlehem. And Naomi and her husband, they decide to go to the land of Moab. In Moab, the sons marry Moabite women. Then her husband dies, then her 2 sons die. The 2 daughter-in-laws have a choice to go back with Naomi to Bethlehem or stay there. One of the girls stays in Moab, but a girl called Ruth, or a young lady called Ruth, decides to go with Naomi to Bethlehem. She says, where you go, I go. Where you sleep, I sleep. Where you die, I die. I want to be with your people. I want to serve your God. And Ruth was a beautiful young woman, beautiful in appearance and beautiful in her heart. In the city of Bethlehem lived a fairly rich man by the name of Boaz. Now, Boaz was from the line of Judah. And as I mentioned before, the line of Judah goes to King David all the way up to the Lord Jesus Christ. So Boaz was from Judah, and Boaz had a lot of fields that needed harvesting. And the harvesters, in one of the laws of Moses, were supposed to leave some of the harvest on the ground, and the gleaners were people that were allowed to go in and pick whatever was left on the ground, and the gleaners were usually the very poor people. So then one day, Boaz sees Ruth as a gleaner, and he says, who is this girl? And I guess he kind of likes her. He told the harvesters, why don't you leave a little bit extra on the ground so that she can pick that up? And he told the young man, the harvesters, leave this girl alone, okay? You don't touch her. So Ruth went back home that night to Naomi, and she showed how much she harvested, and she told Naomi who the man was whose land she was gleaning on. So, oh, that's one of my family members. And why don't you do this? Why don't you go tonight when they are all laying asleep at the threshing floor and warm the feet of Boaz? And that was a tradition for women to indicate that they would like to marry the man. They couldn't just walk up to him and say, "Hey, I want to marry you." So this is what Ruth did. He he was laying asleep, and Ruth came and uncovered her feet, and then his feet, and then she covered them to warm him up. It startled Boaz, and he said, "Who is this?" And oh, it's you. Okay. Um, he ended up marrying her, and she ended up becoming the great great grandmother of King David. So now we have arrived at the bottom of the rib cage. We are now ready to get in a very, very serious part of the Bible, where we talk about the prophet Samuel, King Saul, King David, and King Solomon. And that is a big, big subject. So I would say until next time, and remember, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Thank you.